The night was heavy with rain, the kind that whispered against rooftops and blurred city lights into streaks of gold and grey. Inside a dimly lit apartment, the faint cry of a baby echoed through the narrow hall, sharp and desperate, breaking the silence of midnight. On the worn-out sofa, a woman lay fast asleep, her hair tangled, an empty bottle of cheap wine on the floor beside her. Her name was Lisa. Once, she'd been full of dreams, a promising artist, a girl with laughter that could fill a room. But life had other plans. Abandoned by her partner, buried under bills, and suffocating in regret, she had slowly faded into exhaustion. That night, she had promised herself just a few minutes of rest, but sleep took her deeper than she expected. The baby's cries grew louder, echoing through the cracked walls. No one came. Minutes turned to hours. The rain outside intensified, and water began seeping through the window frame, dripping onto the baby's thin blanket. At dawn, the storm eased, and with it came an eerie calm. A neighbour, Mrs. Dalton, an elderly widow known for her sharp eyes and softer heart, knocked on Lisa's door, worried by the sound of crying that hadn't stopped all night. When there was no answer, she pushed the door open. What she saw made her gasp. The baby, soaked and trembling, was wailing weakly, its tiny fists clenched. Lisa was still unconscious, lips pale, an empty pill bottle on the table. Panic surged through Mrs. Dalton. She rushed to the baby, wrapping it in her shawl before calling for help. By the time the ambulance arrived, Lisa was barely breathing. The medics worked quickly, reviving her, while Mrs. Dalton held the baby close, whispering prayers under her breath. At the hospital, Lisa woke to the sterile scent of disinfectant and the rhythmic beeping of a heart monitor. Her mind was hazy. For a brief moment, she didn't remember. Then it hit her, the crying, the pills, the storm. Her heart dropped. "Where's my baby?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "She's safe," said a nurse softly. A neighbor found her in time. "You're lucky, both of you are." Tears filled Lisa's eyes. Lucky. That word stabbed deep. She'd almost lost the only thing that still tethered her to life. Days passed. Social workers visited. Questions were asked. Warnings were given. Lisa sat in silence through it all, shame heavy on her chest. Yet, every time she looked at her baby, fragile, innocent, forgiving, something in her began to shift. One evening, when Mrs. Dalton visited, Lisa finally spoke. "I thought I could handle it all," she confessed. "But I was drowning. I didn't even realize how far gone I was." Mrs. Dalton placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't need to do it alone, dear. No mother should." Lisa nodded, her eyes lingering on her child's small hand curled around her finger. For the first time in months, she felt something spark inside her, not just guilt, but a determination she'd forgotten she had. She began attending therapy. She stopped drinking. Slowly, she pieced her life back together, painting again during the baby's naps, pouring her guilt and grief onto the canvas. Her art, once abandoned, began to breathe life back into her. A few months later, one of her paintings, a haunting image of a storm sheltering a mother and child beneath its chaos, caught the attention of a local gallery owner. It was raw, emotional, powerful. He offered her a chance to display her work. That night, at the small gallery opening, Lisa stood quietly in the corner, her daughter asleep in her arms. Strangers admired her art, unaware of the story behind it, the pain, the near tragedy, the redemption. Then, as the lights dimmed and applause filled the room, Lisa whispered to her baby, "You saved me before I even knew I needed saving." But outside the gallery, unseen in the shadows, someone watched her, a man in a dark coat, his gaze fixed on Lisa with unsettling intensity. He seemed to know her, though she didn't notice him. And as he turned to leave, he murmured something under his breath, words that would change everything once more. "You don't even remember me, do you?" the man muttered to himself, rain dripping from the brim of his coat as he disappeared into the night. Lisa had no idea that her past had just stepped back into her life, silent but deliberate. The next morning, she woke to her daughter's soft coos and sunlight filtering through the curtains. It was one of those rare mornings where peace felt real. She fed her baby, hummed an old lullaby, and smiled, unaware that someone, somewhere, was already planning to shatter that calm. 3 days later, Lisa received a letter with no return address. It was slipped under her apartment door, cream-colored paper, elegant handwriting, her name written carefully. Inside was a single line. ***, you can't paint away the truth. ***. Her fingers trembled. The words meant nothing at first glance, but they carried a strange familiarity, like a whisper from a memory she had long buried. She looked around, half expecting someone to be watching, but the hallway outside was empty. She tried to laugh it off, but unease crawled up her spine. That evening, as she washed her brushes after finishing a commission, she couldn't shake the feeling of being observed. Every creak in the apartment, every shadow near the window, made her heart race. When her baby began crying, Lisa nearly dropped a glass from her hand. "Just nerves," she whispered to herself, holding her child tightly. "It's just my imagination." But the next morning, she found something else. On her doorstep lay a small, faded photograph, an old family picture. Her younger self was there, maybe 18, smiling awkwardly beside a man. His arm was around her shoulders, his expression unreadable. She remembered that day vaguely, a time when she was naive, lost, and desperate for affection. The man in the photo was the same one from the gallery. Her heart pounded. His name hit her like a slap. Evan. Evan, the man she had met years ago when she was still trying to build her art career. He'd been older, charming, generous at first, until his obsession had begun. He had wanted to control everything: her work, her friends, her freedom. When she tried to leave him, he turned violent. The night she finally escaped, she left everything behind, even the pieces of her art he had destroyed in rage. And now he was back. That night, she double-checked the locks, drew the curtains tight, and kept her baby close. But as the hours dragged on, sleep refused to come. Around 2 a.m., she heard it, a faint scrape at the window. Her pulse spiked. She froze, holding her breath, staring into the darkness. The sound stopped. Then came a whisper, faint, muffled, but close. "Lisa." Her stomach nodded. She moved quietly to the crib, picked up her baby, and backed toward the door. Every instinct screamed at her to run. Just as she reached for her phone, it buzzed with a message from an unknown number. **, don't bother calling the police. I just want to talk. **. Tears welled in her eyes. He knew her number. He knew where she lived. She dialed 911 anyway, whispering shakily to the dispatcher, "Someone's outside my window. He's threatening me." Within minutes, sirens echoed faintly in the distance. When officers arrived, the street was empty. No sign of Evan, no footprints, no trace of intrusion. The window latch, however, had been tampered with. "Keep your doors locked," one officer warned gently. "If he contacts you again, call us immediately. We'll start a report." Lisa nodded numbly, hugging her daughter close. But after the officers left, the fear lingered, thick as smoke. The following days blurred into each other. Lisa tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, painting, feeding, cleaning, but paranoia shadowed every movement. Sometimes she'd see a figure across the street, just standing there, watching. Other times she'd catch the scent of his cologne, faint but distinct, in the hallway. One afternoon, as she was leaving the local grocery store, she noticed a note tucked under her windshield wiper. **, you can't hide forever. We are bound, remember. **. Her knees weakened. She got into her car and locked the doors, her hands trembling so hard she could barely start the engine. She thought about going to the police again, but what would she say? That an ex from years ago was haunting her with cryptic notes? She had no proof. Instead, she drove to Mrs. Dalton's house. The old woman welcomed her in immediately, noticing her pale face and shaking hands. "What's wrong, child?" Lisa told her everything: the letter, the photo, the messages, the man at the gallery. Mrs. Dalton listened silently, her brows furrowed with concern. "You're not imagining this," she said finally. "Men like him, they don't stop easily. You need protection." Mrs. Dalton made a few calls that evening, one of them to her nephew, a retired detective named Howard. The next day, Howard visited Lisa. He was tall, calm, and carried an air of quiet authority. "I've dealt with people like this," he said after listening to her story. He's testing boundaries, trying to see how far he can go without being caught. But he's sloppy, the kind who eventually slips. Howard installed a small security camera near Lisa's window and another by her door. "If he comes back," he said, "we'll catch him." For a few days, nothing happened. Lisa began to relax, even smiled again as she painted. Her daughter had started to giggle, a sound so pure that it chased away shadows for a moment. But peace, for Lisa, never lasted long. On the 5th night, the motion alarm triggered. The soft beep echoed through the apartment. Lisa's blood ran cold. She grabbed her phone and watched the live feed. The screen showed a man, standing just outside the window, looking directly into the camera. His face was half-lit, rain dripping from his hair, but there was no mistaking those eyes. Evan. Lisa's breath caught. He smiled at the lens, slow, deliberate, then raised something small in his hand. A pacifier. Her baby's pacifier. Lisa gasped and ran to the crib. The baby was still there, sleeping soundly, but the pacifier was missing. He had been inside. She screamed, calling Howard immediately. Within minutes, he arrived with the police, but again, Evan was gone. The video was undeniable now, a clear image, a threat made real. This man's escalating, Howard said grimly. He's not just watching anymore, he's trying to make you afraid enough to break. But Lisa was done being afraid. For the first time in years, anger rose in her, fierce, protective, unstoppable. She wasn't going to run this time. Not when her daughter's safety was at stake. I want to stop him, she said, her voice steady. Whatever it takes. Howard nodded. Then we set a trap. They devised a plan, a quiet one. Lisa would act normal, post her artwork online as usual, and pretend she was alone. Meanwhile, Howard would monitor the cameras and wait for Evan to make his next move. Days passed. Lisa painted late into the night, pretending to ignore the feeling of eyes on her. But she was ready. Every sound, every flicker of light outside, made her grip tighten on the phone. And then, on the 7th night, she heard it again, the scrape at the window. This time, she didn't flinch. Howard was watching the feed in real time. He's here, he whispered into his earpiece. Stay calm, Lisa. Don't move. Evan slowly pried open the window, sliding inside like a shadow. He took a step toward the crib. Evan's footsteps were silent as he moved closer to the crib, his figure outlined by the faint moonlight spilling through the half-open curtains. The baby stirred but didn't cry. Lisa's heart thundered so loudly she thought it might give her away. She stayed hidden behind the door, every muscle taut, gripping her phone so hard her knuckles turned white. Howard's voice crackled softly through her earpiece. Wait. Don't move yet. Let him get closer. We need him caught inside. Evan reached the crib and leaned down, his fingertips brushing the baby's blanket. A soft, chilling smile crept across his face. You look just like her, he whispered. But she doesn't deserve you. She never did. That was the moment Lisa's fear snapped. She stepped out from behind the door, rage blazing through every nerve. Don't you touch her, she screamed. Evan's head jerked up, his expression twisting from surprise to dark delight. Lisa, he said softly, almost lovingly. Finally awake. Get away from her. Her voice shook, but her stance didn't. Whatever you think this is, it's over. Evan took a step toward her, raising his hand slowly. You don't understand. I've been trying to save you. We were meant to be. You and me. Save me, she spat. You almost destroyed me. You took everything from me. My peace, my trust, my life. You think that's love? His face hardened. You left me, Lisa. You chose to forget me. But I never forgot you. I watched you become someone else, pretending the past didn't exist, painting your pain like it's art. He sneered. You owe me. You owe us. She glanced subtly at her phone screen. The camera was recording everything. Howard and the police were minutes away. She had to keep him talking. I don't owe you anything, she said, her voice steady now. I owe my daughter a life free from you. That's the only truth left. Evan's smile faded. He stepped closer, and in the dim light, she saw something glint in his hand, a small knife. Her breath caught, but she didn't back away. She couldn't. Not this time. Put it down, she said quietly. You're not going to hurt her. He tilted his head. And if I do, maybe then you'll finally listen. Her pulse roared in her ears. She glanced toward the crib, just a few feet away. You don't want to do this, she said, her tone softening. Look at her. She's innocent. She didn't take anything from you. For a split second, his expression flickered, a hint of conflict, humanity, maybe even guilt. But then the door burst open. Police! Drop the weapon! Evan spun around as officers flooded the room, their flashlights slicing through the darkness. Startled, he lunged, not at the police, but at Lisa. Howard reacted first. He tackled Evan hard, the knife clattering to the floor as both men fell. The baby began to cry, her tiny wails piercing the chaos. 2 officers restrained Evan while Howard checked on Lisa, who was trembling but unhurt. "It's over," Howard said gently, helping her to her feet. But Lisa's eyes were fixed on Evan, handcuffed, head bowed, muttering under his breath. Even then, he stared at her like she was his unfinished masterpiece. As they led him away, he turned his head and whispered, "You'll never forget me, Lisa. You'll see me in every shadow." For a long moment after he was gone, silence filled the room, the kind that comes after a storm, thick with shock and relief. Lisa sank to her knees beside the crib, sobbing softly as she gathered her baby in her arms. "I've got you," she whispered. "You're safe. We are safe now." Howard placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "He's finished. There's enough evidence to keep him away for good." But Lisa didn't answer. She just rocked her baby gently, tears falling onto the blanket, her mind caught between terror and gratitude. Days turned into weeks. Evan's arrest made local headlines. *artist's ex-lover arrested after breaking into home. *reporters tried to reach Lisa, but she refused interviews. The world didn't need to know every detail. What mattered was that she and her daughter were free. For the first time in years, she slept without nightmares. The constant weight on her chest had lifted. She began to paint again, not to escape, but to heal. Her next piece was unlike anything she'd ever created. A storm swirling around a cradle of light, a mother shielding her child as chaos shattered around them. When the painting was revealed at her next exhibition, the crowd fell silent. There was something magnetic about it. Pain transformed into power, fragility turned into defiance. A woman in the audience whispered, "It feels like she survived something unimaginable." And she had. Mrs. Dalton attended too, holding Lisa's baby in her lap. As she watched the young mother speak with quiet confidence to the gallery visitors, she smiled through misty eyes. "She's found herself again," she murmured. After the event, Howard approached Lisa. "You've done something remarkable," he said. "Most people break after what you went through. You built something instead." Lisa smiled faintly. Maybe that's what surviving is, not just living through the storm, but painting with its colors. Howard nodded, impressed by her strength. "Evan's sentencing is next week," he added. "You don't have to be there." "I will be," she said firmly. "Not for him. For me." The day of the sentencing arrived cold and gray. Lisa walked into the courtroom holding her daughter close, her head high. Evan sat at the defendant's table, thinner now, eyes sunken but still burning with the same twisted intensity. When the judge asked if she wanted to speak, Lisa stepped forward. Her voice was calm but carried through the room. "For years," she began, "I lived in fear of being seen, of being followed, of being forgotten. You made me believe I was powerless. But tonight, when I look at my daughter, I see proof that you failed. She's light where you are darkness. And I'm not afraid of you anymore." Evan's jaw tightened. For the first time, he looked small, insignificant. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in prison for breaking and entering, attempted assault, and harassment. As he was led away, Lisa felt a strange stillness wash over her. It wasn't joy, not even relief, it was release. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions, but Lisa didn't stop. She simply walked into the sunlight, her baby asleep in her arms, the future wide open ahead. Months later, her art began gaining national attention. A major gallery in New York offered her a solo exhibition titled **The Light After. Critics describe her work as haunting yet hopeful, raw yet redemptive. Every piece told fragments of her story, pain reborn as beauty. During one of the interviews, when asked what inspired her most, she smiled softly and said, "Redemption. Not the kind that erases what happened, but the kind that lets you own it. I used to think survival was about running from the past. Now I know it's about facing it and walking through it with your head held high." Her words went viral. People from around the world reached out. Single mothers, survivors of abuse, those who had lost themselves and were clawing their way back to life. Lisa's story became a symbol of strength, and her paintings a reminder that brokenness could still be beautiful. But late one evening, as she sat by her studio window watching the city lights flicker, she felt the faintest chill. The night air carried a distant echo, maybe the hum of traffic, maybe imagination, but it made her glance at the shadows just a second too long. She smiled faintly. "You were right about one thing, Evan," she whispered to the dark. "I'll never forget you. But not for the reason you wanted." Her daughter stirred in her sleep, and Lisa turned back toward her canvas. Under the warm glow of her studio light, she began painting a new piece, a sunrise breaking over storm-torn clouds, gold spilling into grey. Her hand moved with purpose, each stroke a declaration of victory. The baby's soft breathing filled the room. Outside, the night began to fade. Lisa paused, looked down at her child, and whispered, "We are finally free." She didn't notice the camera light blinking softly from the corner, the same one Howard had installed months ago, still recording, still watching. But now, it wasn't fear that filled the silence. It was peace, the quiet kind that comes after every battle, when the heart finally remembers how to beat without trembling. And somewhere beyond the city, the first light of dawn began to rise, painting the world in colors only survivors could truly see.